Hello children, I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're staying safe at home. Now to continue with the photosynthesis chapter, today we will start with the process of photosynthesis. You all know that photosynthesis takes place in the leaves, especially in the palisade mesophyll cells and the spongy mesophyll cells. And sunlight seeps in through the transparent cuticle and the upper epidermis. And you know the lower epidermis contains tiny openings which is known as stomata. Now you know stomata, there are numerous stomata on the undersurface of the leaf, that is on the lower epidermis, which allows the diffusion of carbon dioxide and oxygen, and transpiration also takes place through the stomata. Now in the atmosphere there is a higher concentration of carbon dioxide, so carbon dioxide diffuses in through the stomata into the substomatal space which has less carbon dioxide. So the process is diffusion, that is carbon dioxide diffuses in from the region of higher concentration, that is the atmosphere, into a region of lower concentration, and direct contact, it just seeps in through the stomata. Now you know water reaches the leaves from the soil when it is absorbed by the root. Now coming to the chemical equation, okay, to represent the process of photosynthesis, you know, is 6 molecules of carbon dioxide combines with 12 molecules of water, okay, and you know what is required, light energy is required, and what absorbs light energy? Chlorophyll. Okay, then what is produced? 1 molecule of glucose, okay, plus 6 molecules of water. Now this 6 molecules of water is totally reformed in this process. Okay, don't think that it is left over from these 12 molecules of water. No, it is reformed totally, okay, in the process of photosynthesis. And then it gives 6 molecules of oxygen. Now coming to the phases of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis has 2 main phases, okay. First one is light dependent phase. That means in this phase, what is required? Sunlight is required. So it is also known as photochemical phase. Now this phase of photosynthesis takes place in the thylakoids. If you remember, the walls of the thylakoids contains the chlorophyll. So it is here where the photochemical phase takes place. What happens in the photochemical phase? In the first step, chlorophyll activation takes place. How does chlorophyll get activated? It absorbs photons. Now what do you mean by photons? It is the smallest unit of light energy. Okay. In the second step of the photochemical phase, water gets split up. Now you know water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen, so it splits up into hydrogen and oxygen. Okay, how it happens here? 2 molecules of water, if we take, okay, you know 2 molecules of water contains 4 atoms of hydrogen and 2 atoms of oxygen. Okay, so here photons, that is the sun's energy. Okay, how many photons do we require? We require energy of 4 photons. Okay, so remember, this water will turn into hydrogen ion. Now if you remember, hydrogen has only 1 electron in the outermost orbit, so that electron must be given away to form hydrogen ion. So there are 4 hydrogen atoms, so how many ions will be formed? 4. And it has given away the electrons as well, so how many electrons will be formed? 4 electrons. Now this electrons is also used in the process of photosynthesis. I will tell you later on. Okay, and of course with it, how many atoms of oxygen are there? 2 atoms. That means 2 atoms of oxygen will form the oxygen gas. Understood? So the products of photolysis. Okay, so this process is also known as photolysis. Okay, what is this process known as? Photolysis. That means if you are to define photolysis, what will you say? It is defined as the splitting of water molecules into hydrogen ions and oxygen in the presence of light. Okay, so coming to the end result of the products of photolysis, so you know what are we getting in photolysis? We are getting hydrogen ions and oxygen. So hydrogen ions are picked up by a compound nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate, abbreviated as NADP. Please remember NADP. If you remember, I had told you in the class how these abbreviations are important. You will just get to expand them. So when the hydrogen ions are picked by NADP, it turns into NADPH. Okay, so NADP, okay, it gives away one electron, okay, and that one electron is taken up by the hydrogen ion to turn it into the atom. So that is why it becomes NADPH. Now next, oxygen is also formed in photolysis. So you know oxygen is given out as a gas. Now the released electrons, remember electrons are also released in photolysis, okay, are used to convert ADP to ATP. Now whenever energy is used in the plant, okay, for certain functions, ATP turns into ADP, and this ADP is stored in the plant body. So the electrons that is released during photolysis converts ADP into ATP by adding one phosphate, okay. Adenosine diphosphate, di means 2-phosphate, adenosine triphosphate means 3-phosphate. So when one phosphate group is added to ADP, it turns into ATP, and that addition of the phosphate is done by the released electrons. Now this process of addition of one phosphate to ADP to turn it into ATP is known as phosphorylation. And how did we get the electrons to turn ADP into ATP? By the process of photosynthesis. So the energy used came from light. It comes from the light. So this process is known as photophosphorylation. I hope it is clear. Now next we come to the dark phase of photosynthesis. Now dark phase doesn't mean that it is taking place at night. It only means that it does not require light energy. It is taking light phase and dark phase. It takes place one after another in quick succession. But the only thing is it does not require light. Okay, so all you have to know about the dark phase, you don't have to go into details. Okay, just remember that in the dark phase glucose is formed. Okay, now next is the glucose that is formed in the leaves. It is converted into starch. Now some of it is carried by the phloem to various parts of the plant body. But remember, during the daytime, so much of photosynthesis takes place that it is not possible for the phloem to carry the glucose continuously away from the leaves. So there is lots and lots of glucose formed in the leaves. So what happens? The excess of glucose, they come together, okay? Many molecules, they come together and they convert into starch. Remember, the starch is insoluble. Insoluble means it does not dissolve in water. Okay, so it remains in the leaves. This process is known as polymerization. It is known as polymerization. Okay, now sometimes what happens? The glucose that is produced, it converts into sucrose and sometimes even to certain oils. Now next we come to adaptations in the leaf for photosynthesis. That means how are leaves adapted so that maximum photosynthesis can take place. Okay, now it has large surface area. Larger the surface area, more sunlight can enter and more photosynthesis can take place. The arrangement of the leaves are in such a way, we are talking about phyllotaxy, arrangement of leaves on the stem. Okay, so either opposite or whorled or right angle to each other, so that sunlight will not be like, sunlight will reach each and every part of each and every leaf. Now, I already told you about the transparency of the cuticle and the epidermis. Okay, it is transparent so that the sunlight can seep inside easily. And of course, numerous stomata. More stomata means more carbon dioxide can get inside the leaves. And the leaves are very thin, so that there is rapid transport of water as well as carbon dioxide. Okay, and chloroplasts are concentrated in the upper layers, if you remember, the palisade and the spongy mesophyll cells, so that the light can reach them quickly. And then of course the extensive vein system, so that maximum water will reach the leaves at a quicker time, so that the food is prepared. And even the prepared food is carried away because of the extensive vein system. Now next we come to the end results of the product of photosynthesis. Now you know the products of photosynthesis. They are glucose, water and oxygen. Okay, now what happens to the glucose? End result means what happens to the glucose, what happens to the water, what happens to the oxygen. Now glucose, it is used by the plants immediately. It may be carried away by the phloem to various parts of the plants, or if it cannot be carried away, I already told you, polymerization takes place. Many glucose molecules, they will come together and they form insoluble starch, and it is stored temporarily in the leaves. And at night, when the photosynthesis does not take place, the starch is reconverted back into glucose, and then the phloem keeps carrying it to various parts of the plant. Okay, and in some cases, like in sugar canes, it is converted to sucrose. Okay, and sometimes this glucose is also used to synthesize fats and proteins in the plants. Okay, now water, what happens to the 6 molecules of water that is released? It is reused for photosynthesis. Now coming to oxygen, what happens to the oxygen? Some of the oxygen is used for respiration by the plants. Now since this oxygen they are using is coming from the process of photosynthesis, this respiration is also known as photorespiration. So when we talk about photorespiration, or if you are to define photorespiration, what will you define it as? It is the respiration that takes place in plants using the oxygen which comes from photosynthesis. But only little bit of the oxygen is used for photorespiration, but maximum of the oxygen is given out as a byproduct. Okay, now for plants, oxygen is a waste product. But is it for living organisms? No, it is not. Why? Because we use it for respiration. Now, the glucose that is produced in the leaves, it is carried to all different parts of the plants. So glucose is required by all other parts of the plants. Now, glucose produced rapidly, but it cannot be transported as rapidly. I told you, remember? Okay, so glucose is produced very rapidly during the daytime, but it cannot be transported as rapidly. So what happens? Many molecules of glucose come together, they form starch, and then it is stored temporarily in the leaves. Okay, and at night starch is reconverted into soluble sugar, and then it is carried by the phloem to different parts of the plant body. Okay, that means it is translocated. So after it reaches the various parts of the plant body, it may even get reconverted to starch and stored, like in the case of potatoes. Okay, so moving on to factors affecting photosynthesis. There are external as well as internal factors. There are 4 external factors: light intensity, carbon dioxide concentration, temperature and water content. Okay, now you can easily think that the rate of photosynthesis will increase if the light intensity increases. Okay, it is true only up to a certain limit. Okay, now just look at this graph that I have made. Okay, this side there is increasing light intensity. Okay, and this is increasing rate of photosynthesis. Now what happens is, when the rate of light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases. It will keep on increasing, keep on increasing, keep on increasing, keep on increasing. And at a certain point, S dash, when the carbon dioxide concentration has reached 0.02%, the rate of photosynthesis stops and it gets stable. That means the curve is flattened. I wish we could flatten the curve. Only way we can do it is by staying at home. We are doing that. Okay, now supposing at this point more carbon dioxide is given to it. Again, the rate of photosynthesis increases. Of course, the light intensity is also increasing. So, and at this point, when the rate of photosynthesis stops and gets stabilized at the carbon dioxide concentration of 0.02%. Okay, so at this point the light intensity is also increasing and you are giving it more carbon dioxide. So what will happen? Again it will rise. It will start rising, 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 and again it will reach another point, S dash. So at this point the carbon dioxide concentration is 0.05. It has increased to 0.05. So this point it was 0.02%. Okay, again we increased the amount of carbon dioxide and it reached 0.05%. Okay, the concentration of carbon dioxide. But beyond that, remember, the rate of photosynthesis will not increase. It will remain the same. Understood? So the maximum or the highest rate of photosynthesis reached is at 0.05% of concentration of carbon dioxide. Okay. Now next, coming to temperature. If there is a rise in temperature, photosynthesis increases. Okay. And the optimum temperature, you know, optimum temperature means the right temperature where photosynthesis takes place the best, it occurs the best. So the optimum temperature is 35 degrees Celsius. So at 35 degrees Celsius, photosynthesis occurs best, after which the rate of photosynthesis falls. Now from 35 to 36 degrees, if the temperature rises from 35 to 36 degrees, what happens to the rate of photosynthesis? It falls. Okay, and stops completely above 40 degrees Celsius, because what happens above 40 degrees Celsius, the enzymes are destroyed. We are talking about the enzymes which help in photosynthesis. Now supposing if there is a rise of 10 degrees Celsius up to the optimum temperature, you know optimum temperature is 35 degrees Celsius. What happens if there is a rise of 10 degrees Celsius up to optimum temperature? It doubles the rate of photosynthesis. That means if the temperature increases from 20 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius, or from 23 degrees Celsius to 33 degrees Celsius, or from 25 degrees Celsius to 35 degrees Celsius. Remember, 35 is the optimum. We cannot take 26 degrees Celsius to 36 degrees Celsius, because remember, at 36 degrees Celsius the rate of photosynthesis drops. So if there is an increase of 10 degrees Celsius up to the optimum temperature, 35 degrees Celsius is the maximum, what happens? The rate of photosynthesis doubles. Clear? Now next is water content. Supposing there is a loss of water due to some situation that arises, like there is less water in the soil, okay, or more transpiration has taken place, there is less absorption by the roots because there is no water in the soil, or more transpiration has taken place. So naturally, if there is less water, what will happen? The guard cells will become flaccid, the stomata will close, and as a result, what happens? The rate of photosynthesis also stops. Okay. Now next we come to the internal factors. Okay. Now there are three internal factors. First is chlorophyll. Okay. Next is protoplasm, and the next is the structure of the leaf. Okay. Now supposing there is loss of chlorophyll, how does chlorophyll get less in a leaf? Due to nutritional deficiencies of minerals, less minerals, and as a result, what happens? Chlorophyll will not be able to produce itself, so the pigment will not be produced, so it causes a loss of chlorophyll, so photosynthesis does not take place, because chlorophyll is responsible for absorbing the solar energy. Now in protoplasm, you know what protoplasm is. It is a substance that makes up the entire cell. So if there is dehydration of protoplasm, dehydration means there is no water. Now again, if there is no water, what will happen? Stomata will close, and then carbon dioxide intake will be it will stop, and as a result it reduces the rate of photosynthesis. And sometimes what happens, there is accumulation of sugar or starch in the leaves. Now during the daytime, when photosynthesis takes place and lots of photosynthesis is taking place, and there is accumulation of sugar and starch in the leaves, so what will happen? Photosynthesis will not take place. And finally we come to the structure of a leaf. Now when we talk about the structure of the leaf, there is the cuticle, there is stomata, which directly is linked to the amount of light and amount of carbon dioxide that enters the leaf. So the thickness of the cuticle, the number of stomata which is present in the leaf, and the size of the leaf, it influences the amount of light and the amount of carbon dioxide that enters the leaf. So the structure of the leaf is also one of the internal factors which affects photosynthesis. So this is all for today. If you have any problem, please ask in the WhatsApp group. Okay, so please go through till here. The remaining we will continue in the next upload. Have a nice day, children. Miss you.